My son shouted at me in front of 25 people during Christmas dinner. "Mom, if you want to keep living here, pay rent like any other tenant or get out." What Matthew didn't know was that this penthouse of nearly 2,000 square feet in Tribeca, New York City, where he bragged about living thanks to his brilliant career as an architect, was mine. The gray Cadillac Escalade he parked in the garage every night was mine. The American Express Platinum card his wife, Audrey, used to buy designer bags on Fifth Avenue was mine. Everything, absolutely everything, was mine. I am Sarah Vance. I am 64 years old, and this is the story of how my silence almost destroyed my only son, and how breaking it saved him. The aroma of roast turkey filled every corner of the penthouse. I had been working since 6 a.m., preparing the apple pie, the homemade pecan bars, and the candied yams that Matthew had loved since he was a boy. 25 people were settling into the dining room: cousins, uncles, Matthew's friends, Audrey's colleagues. The table gleamed with fine china and crystal glasses, reflecting the lights of the Christmas tree. I moved from the kitchen to the dining room, serving, clearing plates, and refilling glasses with a California Zinfandel. My apron was stained with gravy, my hair pulled back in a simple bun, and my hands, wrinkled by the years, trembled slightly as I held the heavy tray. "Sarah, sit down for a moment," my cousin Karen said with that condescending smile I knew so well. "You've done enough." "I'm fine," I replied, forcing a smile. From my position by the open kitchen island, I could see the entire dining room. Matthew was seated at the head of the table, wearing a crisp white linen shirt and the luxury watch Audrey had given him last year. He was talking to his cousin Alex about his latest project, a corporate high-rise in Hudson Yards. "This month has been crazy," Matthew said, gesturing with his wine glass. "The client is pushing hard on the timeline, but hey, the salary of a senior architect in NYC isn't bad at all. It's enough to maintain this place, the car, and everything else." Audrey, sitting next to him, smiled with satisfaction. She wore a red dress that probably cost more than a nurse's monthly salary. Her nails, perfectly manicured, shimmered as she stroked Matthew's arm. "And even so," Audrey added, raising her voice slightly so everyone could hear, "the bills never stop. This apartment, the decor, maintaining the lifestyle. Nothing is free in this city." Several heads nodded. My Uncle George cleared his throat. "She's right. Rents around here are impossible. At least $5,000 or $6,000 a month for a decent apartment." "Exactly," Matthew said, straightening in his chair. "That's why I always say you have to work hard. No one gives you anything for free in this city." I felt a knot in my stomach, but I kept serving the turkey. No one looked at me. No one noticed how I gripped the serving spoon harder than necessary. The conversation kept revolving around money, the cost of living, and how hard it was to make ends meet coming from people who had just ordered opening a third bottle of wine worth nearly $80. And then it happened. Matthew wiped his mouth with his napkin, took a sip of wine, and looked directly at me. In his eyes, there was something I recognized immediately: the same determination his father, Anthony, had when making important decisions. But this time, that look brought nothing good. "Mom," he said with a tone that cut through every conversation, "since we're talking about the subject of the house." The dining room went silent. 25 pairs of eyes turned toward me. "I've been thinking," he continued, placing his glass on the table with a soft but firm tap. "If you want to keep living here with us, you should contribute a portion of the rent, like any adult sharing a space." Time stopped. "It's only fair, right?" he added, looking for approval in the other's eyes. "We're all adults. And if it's difficult for you with your widow's pension, well, maybe it would be better if you looked for something more within your means." Audrey nodded, taking a sip of her wine. "Nowadays, we must all be responsible for our expenses, even if we are family. In fact, precisely because we are family, we must be honest about these things." I looked around the table. My cousin Karen avoided my gaze. Uncle George coughed again and focused on his plate. A couple of guests nodded slightly, as if saying, "It makes sense." My Aunt Patricia even murmured, "Well, yes, at our age we should be more independent." No one, not a single person, raised their voice to defend me. No one said, "How can you talk to your mother like that?" No one asked, "Are you really going to kick her out on Christmas?" The silence was so thick I could hear the ticking of the wall clock in the kitchen. I felt as if 28 years of sacrifices, of sleepless nights, of building a legacy so my son could have a future, evaporated into the penthouse's central air conditioning. Carefully, I placed the spoon on the counter, folded my napkin, and placed it next to my untouched plate. I stood up, feeling my knees creak. "Thank you for coming," I said with a voice so serene it surprised me. "This will probably be the last Christmas dinner I spend in this house." Matthew blinked, confused. "Mom, you don't have to be so dramatic. We're just talking about being realistic with—" "You're right, Matthew," I interrupted him, looking him directly in the eyes. "It is time to be realistic." I turned around and walked down the hallway leading to my bedroom. Behind me, I heard uncomfortable murmurs, chairs scraping, someone trying to restart the conversation with a, "Well, who wants dessert?" I closed my bedroom door. The sound of the latch was soft, but in my mind, it echoed like the final closing of an entire chapter of my life. Flashback, 30 years ago. I sat on the edge of the bed and looked at the small room that had been my refuge for the last 3 years. A twin bed, an antique wardrobe, 2 picture frames on the nightstand. I picked one up, Anthony and me. The day we inaugurated our first building in Queens. I was 34 years old. I wore a simple floral dress and my hair tied back. Anthony held the ceremonial scissors, ready to cut the ribbon. Behind us, a modest 4-story building. Our first dream come true. Reflective narration. How did I get here? How did I go from being a young mother with a dream to a widow supported by her own son? Let me tell you the truth that no one at that table knew. Flashback continues. 1989. Anthony and I met in a small town in rural Pennsylvania. I was 19. I worked cleaning houses. He was a construction worker. He was 22 years old and had the hardest working hands I had ever seen in my life. We got married 6 months later in a simple ceremony at the town church. The honeymoon was a weekend at the Jersey Shore. When Matthew was born, we were living in a studio apartment of about 300 square feet in a humble neighborhood in Queens, New York. Anthony worked in construction 12 hours a day. I did bookkeeping for small businesses from home, with Matthew sleeping in a crib next to me. Every dollar we earned went into a metal box hidden under the bed. No luxuries, no vacations, just work, saving, and a dream. To buy our own property. It took us 12 years. 12 years of counting coins. 12 years of declining dinners with friends because we had already eaten. 12 years of second-hand clothes from thrift stores. 12 years of watching Matthew grow up in that tiny studio, sleeping with us until he was 7 because there wasn't room for another bed. In 1995, we finally bought our first apartment, a fixer-upper in Brooklyn, for $45,000. We renovated it ourselves. Anthony installed the plumbing. I painted the walls. Matthew, at 6 years old, handed us the tools. We rented it to a young couple for $1,200 a month. That money went into another metal box, and then into another apartment, and another. Anthony had a gift. He could look at an abandoned building and visualize exactly how to turn it into something beautiful. I had another gift. I could make every dollar multiply in the ledgers. In 2003, we bought our 5th building. The lawyer suggested creating a company to handle everything legally. Anthony thought of the sparrows he always saw on the power lines in Brooklyn, small but tireless. Vance Properties, he said, like our last name, but with wings. Together, we survived the 2008 financial crisis. When others were panic selling, we bought strategically. Buildings in Astoria, apartments in Park Slope, commercial spaces in Tribeca. By 2015, Vance Properties had 47 properties in its portfolio. And then, on a rainy Tuesday in November 2017, Anthony clutched his chest while reviewing blueprints in our office. Sarah was the last thing he said before collapsing. The hospital informed me it had been a massive heart attack. He didn't suffer, the doctor said. As if that consoled me. Back to the present. I opened the nightstand drawer and took out a manila folder. Inside were documents that no one in this house knew existed. Articles of incorporation. Vance Properties, LLC. Shareholder, Sarah Vance, 85%. James Turner. Property deed, penthouse Tribeca, 234 Greenwich Street. Owner, Vance Properties, LLC. Vehicle registration. Gray Cadillac Escalade, plates AE 642. Registered to Vance Properties. Authorized user. Temporary. Matthew Vance. Credit card statement, additional cardholder. Primary account, Sarah Vance. I turned the pages slowly. Each document was a reminder of what I had built and what I had allowed my son to believe was his. Flashback 3 years ago. Matthew had finished his architecture degree. He got a job at a respectable firm. His salary was about $60,000 a year. Not bad for a recent graduate, but not enough for the lifestyle he had always dreamed of. One day, he came to visit me at the Vance Properties office. I kept a low profile, working from a small room in the back of the building, while James handled public meetings as CEO. "Mom," Matthew said, sitting across from my desk. "I want to be independent. I found an apartment for rent in Tribeca, but it costs $4,500 a month. With my salary, it's possible, but I'd be very tight." I looked at him. He had inherited Anthony's eyes, that determination, but also a certain youthful naivety that didn't yet know the true price of things. I opened the Vance Properties internal system on my computer. "We have an empty penthouse on Greenwich Street," I told him. 2,000 square feet, remodeled 2 years ago. Market value $8,500 a month. Matthew's eyes widened. "Mom, that's way out of my budget. I'll rent it to you for $3,000, I said. "Internal discount. Family and employee rate, really." His face lit up. "But don't you need it?" "I'm fine in my apartment in Queens," I lied. In reality, that apartment was also mine, but he didn't know that. Besides, I preferred living simply. He was young. He deserved a nice place. He signed the lease that same week. The paper said, "Tenant, Matthew Vance, landlord, Vance Properties, LLC." He never asked who was behind Vance Properties. 2 months later, Audrey appeared in his life, a fashion influencer with 50,000 followers on Instagram. I saw her posting photos of the penthouse. My architect boyfriend has impeccable taste for spaces. When they got married, I gave him something else, an additional credit card linked to my primary account. "Just for emergencies," I told him, "in case you need something important." Something important became dinners at expensive restaurants. Emergencies were $500 handbags. I received the statements every month and paid them in silence. $200 here, $1,000 there, $3,400 for a trip to Miami. I never said anything. And when Matthew asked to use one of the company cars to present himself better to clients, James signed the authorization that I approved from my small office. "It's temporary," I told James. "Just until he saves money to buy his own car." 3 years later, temporary was still his gray Cadillac. Decision in the present. I took out my cell phone. It was 11:47 p.m. on Christmas night. Outside, fireworks from some private party lit up the Manhattan skyline. I dialed a number I had on speed dial. "James, it's Sarah." "Sarah, Merry Christmas. Is everything okay?" His voice sounded worried. James Turner had been Anthony's right-hand man, and after his death, he became my confidant and the only one who knew the full truth about my role at Vance Properties. "I need you to prepare all the documents related to Matthew tomorrow morning, first thing," I said, looking at the photos on the wall, the lease, the vehicle authorization, the credit card statements. There was silence on the other end of the line. "Are you sure, Sarah?" "Completely sure," I replied. "It is time for my son to learn the true meaning of the word independence that he likes to use so much." I pulled a suitcase from the closet. A cloud of dust puffed out when I opened it. It still had the tags from a trip to the Grand Canyon that Anthony and I had planned before his death. We never made it. I started folding my clothes. I didn't have much. 3 blouses, 2 pairs of pants, a sweater, underwear, my comfortable shoes. Everything fit perfectly in half the suitcase. I paused in front of the closet mirror. A 64-year-old woman looked back at me, gray hair tied back, wrinkles around the eyes, hands marked by decades of work. I had spent nearly 40 years building something important, and for the last 3, I had allowed my son to trample on that legacy while I served dinner in silence. Why did I do it? Why did I let him believe that lie? Because I wanted him to be happy. Because I wanted him to feel successful, capable, independent. Because I thought that if I gave him everything, he would naturally be grateful. I was wrong. Silent love that sets no boundaries is not love. It is complicity with selfishness. I zipped the suitcase. The sound of the zipper was definitive. I took my purse, put in my wallet, my phone, the keys to my other apartment, the real one, the one Matthew had never seen. I opened my bedroom door. The sound of laughter and music drifted from the dining room. They had resumed the party. They probably thought I was crying in my room, that tomorrow I would come out regretful, begging forgiveness for ruining their Christmas. I dragged the suitcase down the hall. The wheels on the hardwood floor made a screech that cut through the music like a knife. The conversation ceased. 25 heads turned. Audrey was the first to speak. With that condescending smile, "Sarah, don't be dramatic. No one is kicking you out. We're just having an adult conversation about responsibilities." I interrupted her. "You're right, Audrey. It is time for us all to be responsible adults." Matthew stood up from the table, his cheeks slightly red from the wine. "Mom, where are you going?" "I didn't mean for you to leave today. I just wanted you to understand that." "I understood perfectly," I said firmly from the door. "I understood that you believe this house is yours, that the car is yours, that everything you have is thanks to your effort." "Because it is," Audrey intervened, standing up. "Matthew works hard. He gets up early, works late. No one has given him anything." I looked her directly in the eyes. There was so much I could have said. I could have revealed everything right there. I could have pulled out the property deeds and thrown them in her face. But I didn't. Because the best lesson doesn't come from words. It comes from consequences. "You're right," I said simply. "No one gives anything for free. See you soon." I opened the penthouse door. Matthew took a step toward me. "Mom, at least tell me where you're going. Let me call you an Uber." "Not necessary," I replied. "I already ordered a car, but at least send me a text when you arrive, just so I know you're okay." I looked him in the eyes. My son. The boy I had held in my arms. The young man I watched graduate. The man who had just chosen pride over love. "When I consider it necessary to communicate." "I will," I said softly. "Merry Christmas, Matthew." I closed the door behind me. The hallway of the building was silent, lit by cold LED lights. I dragged my suitcase to the elevator. I didn't look back. I didn't cry. I simply breathed. For the first time in 3 years, I breathed without the weight of a lie crushing my chest. The elevator descended the 7 floors in silence. When the doors opened in the lobby, the night doorman looked up in surprise. "Leaving, Mrs. Vance?" "So late?" "Robert," I said, remembering his name, although he probably thought I was just Matthew's mom. "Would you do me a favor?" "Of course." "When they come to pick up the gray Cadillac in the next few days, the one in spot number 7, allow them access. They have authorization from the company." Robert blinked, confused, but nodded. "As you say, ma'am." Outside, a black Lincoln Town car was waiting for me. It wasn't a taxi, it was a Vance Properties corporate car driven by Michael, one of our trusted employees. "Good evening, Mrs. Vance," he said, taking my suitcase. "To the apartment in Queens?" "Yes, Michael." "To Queens." I settled into the back seat. New York City passed by the window. Illuminated streets, tourists walking even on Christmas, closed shops with glittering displays. This city, my city, I had conquered it dollar by dollar, brick by brick, contract by contract. And somewhere along the way, I had become invisible in my own story. The car turned toward the Midtown Tunnel, heading to a quiet residential neighborhood in Queens, very different from the bustle of Tribeca. That was where I really lived, an apartment of about 900 square feet in a 4-story walk-up building. No doorman. No luxuries. Michael stopped the car in front of number 23. "Need help with the suitcase?" "No thanks. I can handle it." I climbed the stairs. There was no elevator to get to the 2nd floor. I opened the door with my key. The apartment smelled like a place rarely used, like spaces that are only opened every now and then. It was my secret refuge. The place I came to when I needed to think, work without interruptions, or simply be Sarah Vance, businesswoman, instead of the mother supported by her son. I left the suitcase by the door and sat on the sofa. The silence was absolute. No music, no laughter, no son telling me to pay or get out, just me, and the decisions I would have to make at dawn. I took out my cell phone. 3 missed calls from Matthew. 1 message. Mom, please tell me you're okay. I didn't want you to leave like that. It was just a conversation. Call me. I didn't answer. Instead, I opened my laptop and logged into the Vance Properties system. I clicked on the folder Assets assigned to Matthew Vance. The list appeared. Lease agreement. 234 Greenwich Street. Expires the 31st of January 2024. Assigned vehicle. Cadillac AE 642. Authorization. Temporary. Additional credit card. Limit $20,000. Linked to primary account. 3 clicks. That was all I needed to change my son's life. Was I being cruel, vengeful? No. I was being a mother who finally understood that the greatest act of love is not giving everything, but teaching the value of everything. I closed the laptop. Tomorrow I would talk to James. Tomorrow the process would begin. That night, I slept better than I had in 3 years. The Vance Properties office occupied the 3rd floor of a modernist building in Midtown, right between 2 luxury retailers. I arrived at 8:30 a.m. on December 27th. The receptionist, a young woman named Sophie, almost dropped her coffee when she saw me. Mrs. Vance, we weren't expecting you. Good morning. Good morning, Sophie. Is James in? Yes. He arrived half an hour ago. He's in his office. I walked down the hall. On the walls were photographs of our most iconic buildings. In one of them, taken 5 years ago during the inauguration of a residential complex in Brooklyn, Anthony appeared with his hard hat, smiling at the camera. By his side, out of focus, was me. No one knew who that woman was. To everyone, she was just another employee. I knocked on James's door. Come in. James Turner, about 45, impeccably dressed with silver at his temples, stood up when he saw me. Sarah, please, sit down. I didn't sit immediately. I went to the window. From there, you could see the avenue. Morning traffic, tourists with maps, office workers running to the subway. Did you bring the documents? I asked. James opened a manila folder on his desk. Everything is here. But before we continue, I need to ask, are you absolutely sure, once we start this? James, I interrupted, turning toward him. Anthony and I built all this in silence, with humility. We never wanted to be the rich family that shows off. But at some point, my silence stopped being humility and became a lie. A lie that allowed my son to talk to me as if I were a burden. I know, he said softly. I never agreed with keeping him in ignorance, but I respected your decision. It was my mistake, I admitted, and it is my responsibility to correct it. I finally sat down. James slid the folder toward me. I opened it. The first document was the penthouse lease signed 3 years ago, automatically renewed each year. Clause 12.3. The landlord may terminate the contract with 30 days' notice if they do not wish to renew. The second document was the vehicle authorization. Simple, direct, Vance Properties. LLC authorizes the temporary use of vehicle Cadillac AE 642 to Matthew Vance for company representation purposes. Authorization may be revoked at any time. The third was the credit card statement from the last 6 months. My hands trembled as I saw the numbers. Le Bernardin, high-end restaurant, $850. Louis Vuitton, Fifth Ave, $3,500. Four Seasons Executive Suite, $2,000. Trip to Las Vegas, $4,000. Designer furniture, $1,800. The list went on page after page of expenses totaling nearly $50,000 in 6 months. Meanwhile, I was still wearing the same navy blue coat from 5 years ago. Did you bring Rachel too? I asked, referring to our lawyer. She's waiting in the conference room. Rachel Martin, a 50-year-old woman with a reputation for being ruthless but fair, had handled our legal affairs since Anthony died. When I entered, she already had her laptop open and several legal codes marked with yellow sticky notes. Sarah, she said, shaking my hand. James filled me in. I'm very sorry about what happened. I don't need condolences, I replied, sitting down. I need legal solutions. Rachel nodded, appreciating my clarity. Very well. We have 3 assets your son currently enjoys: the residence, the vehicle, and the credit card. Let's look at the options for each. She opened a presentation on her laptop and turned the screen toward me. 1. Property. Penthouse in Tribeca. The contract is about to expire on January 31st, she explained. Legally, you have the right not to renew it. You just need to send a formal notice 30 days in advance, which would be today, December 27th. And if he refuses to leave, then we start an eviction process. But honestly, Sarah, I don't think it will be necessary. When he receives a notification from a property management company, not his mother, the reaction will be different. And if he tries to find out who the owner is? Rachel smiled slightly. Vance Properties is an LLC. The partners are not public record. He would have to request formal information from the Department of State, which takes time, and by then, the 30 days will have passed. Dose. Vehicle. Cadillac Escalade. This is simpler, she continued. It's company property. He only has temporary authorization to use it. We can revoke the authorization immediately and request its return. How is it done? We send a formal communication requesting the return of the vehicle within a maximum of 48 hours. If he doesn't comply, we send a company employee with a tow truck and the spare keys. Do it, I said without hesitation. 3. Additional credit card. This is the simplest, Rachel said. It's an additional card linked to your personal account. You can cancel it with one call. Immediate effect. I looked at the 3 documents in front of me. My son would receive 3 blows in a matter of days. He would lose his house, his car, and his unlimited access to money. Isn't it too harsh? James asked quietly. Can we do it gradually? First the card, then the car, and later. No, I interrupted him. Gradual would be cruel. It would be like cutting off a finger each day instead of ripping off the bandage all at once. He needs to feel the full impact to understand the magnitude of his error. Rachel looked at me with something resembling respect. You are stronger than I thought. I'm not strong, I replied. I'm a mother who was blind for 3 years and finally decided to open her eyes. We spent the next 2 hours drafting the documents. Document 1. Letter of non-renewal of lease. Dear Mr. Matthew Vance, Vance Properties, LLC, as the landlord of the property located at 234 Greenwich Street, Tribeca, hereby notifies you that the lease agreement expiring on the 31st of January 2024 will not be renewed. In accordance with housing laws, you have the indicated period to vacate the property in the same condition in which it was delivered. Sincerely, James Turner, CEO, Vance Properties, LLC. Document 2. Request for vehicle return. Dear Mr. Matthew Vance, the purpose of this letter is to inform you that the temporary authorization for the use of the Cadillac vehicle, plates AE 642, property of Vance Properties, LLC, is hereby revoked effective this date. We request the return of the vehicle within a maximum of 48 hours to our facilities at 89 Fifth Avenue. In case of non-compliance, we will proceed to recover the asset by appropriate legal means. Sincerely, Asset Department, Vance Properties, LLC. Document 3. Cancellation of credit card. This only required a call to the bank. Rachel put it on speaker. Chase Bank, Card Services. This is Laura. How can I help you? Good morning, Rachel said. I'm calling on behalf of Mrs. Sarah Vance, account holder ending in 823. We need to cancel an additional card. Of course. In whose name is it? Matthew Vance. One moment, please. Yes, here it is. Do you want immediate or scheduled cancellation? Rachel looked at me. I nodded. Immediate, she replied. Perfect. The card will be blocked in approximately 2 hours. Anything else? Yes, I added, leaning toward the phone. I would like to receive a detailed expense report for the last 12 months, please. Of course, Mrs. Vance. We will email it to you today. We hung up. Rachel closed her laptop. That's it. The documents will be sent today via certified courier and email. The card will be canceled before noon. And the car? When do you want us to recover it? Tomorrow, I replied. Give him time to read the letter first. Let him understand that this is serious. James leaned back in his seat. And you? Where will you be when all this explodes? In my apartment, I said. I don't plan to hide. If Matthew looks for me, he knows where the office is, but I'm not going to make it easy for him. And if he goes to the press? Rachel asked. Millionaire mother kicks out her son. It would be a juicy headline. Let him do it, I replied. I have 28 years of documents showing exactly how I built this wealth, and I have 6 months of bank statements showing how he and his wife used it as a personal ATM. I stood up, my knees creaking slightly. 64 years. Sometimes I felt every one of them in my bones, thanks to both of them. I know this is uncomfortable, Sarah, James said, standing up. Anthony would be proud of you. He always said true love sets boundaries. I wish you had listened to him sooner. I felt a lump in my throat. I wish, I whispered. I left the office at 11:30 a.m. The winter sun shone over Midtown. Tourists were taking photos in front of Rockefeller Center. A couple argued about which restaurant to choose for lunch. Life went on. I stopped in front of the Louis Vuitton window. On the central mannequin was a bag I recognized from the bank statement's $2,500. Audrey had bought it in October and showed it off on her Instagram with the caption, "When your husband spoils you." At that moment, my phone vibrated. A text from Matthew. "Mom, good morning. Where are you?" "I went by the apartment in Queens that I thought was yours, but the super says a young couple lives there. Can you call me?" "I'm worried." I put the phone away without answering. I walked to a small coffee shop in Hell's Kitchen, one of those places that doesn't have Instagram, just good coffee and honest bagels. I ordered a coffee and a bagel. Total, $6. Audrey surely spent that on a single fingernail at the salon. My phone rang. It was James. "The emails have been sent," he said. "Matthew should receive them any moment." "Perfect. Sarah, are you really okay?" "Yes," I replied, looking out the coffee shop window for the first time in 3 years. "I'm fine." I hung up and took a sip of the hot, strong coffee, without frills, like the truth that was about to fall on my son. Day 1, December 28th, 9:15 a.m. Matthew opened his laptop at the dining table of the penthouse. Audrey was still asleep. The night before, they had been up until 3 a.m. discussing Sarah's drama. "Exaggerated," Audrey had said. "Your mom has always been dramatic. Tomorrow she'll be back begging forgiveness." But that morning there were no messages or calls, just a strange silence that tightened his stomach. He checked his inbox. Between corporate emails and newsletters he never read, he saw a subject line that froze his blood. Formal notification. Termination of lease agreement. Sender. Vance Properties Administration. His heart started beating faster. He opened the email with trembling hands. He read the first line, then the second. Then he had to read it 3 times because his brain refused to process it. "Will not be renewed. Vacate the property. The 31st of January 2024. "What?" he whispered. He looked for the phone number at the bottom of the email and dialed. It rang 4 times before a professional female voice answered. "Vance Properties Administration." "Good morning." "Yes. Hi. This is Matthew Vance. I received an email about the cancellation of my lease. It must be a mistake. I always pay on time. I've never had problems with—" "One moment, Mr. Vance. Let me check your file." Matthew heard the clicking of a keyboard. Every second was an eternity. "Mr. Vance, there is no mistake. The owner decided not to renew the contract. It is their legal right under Clause 12.3. But why? Did I do something wrong? I don't have that information, sir. We only execute the owner's decisions. I need to speak to them. This doesn't make sense. Who is the owner? That information is confidential. If you wish to appeal, you can send a formal request to our office in Midtown." "Midtown. I know that office. It's close to where I work. Can I help you with anything else?" "Yes. Can I continue renting when the apartment goes back on the market?" "Of course. You can apply like any other applicant. The market price is approximately $8,500 a month." Matthew almost dropped the phone. $8,500. "But I pay." "You pay $3,000, Mr. Vance, a preferential rate that will no longer apply." The line cut off. Matthew stood staring at the cell phone screen. $8,500. His monthly salary was about $7,000 after taxes. It was mathematically impossible. "What's wrong?" Audrey appeared in the doorway, wrapped in an expensive silk robe. "Why are you shouting?" "We're getting evicted," Matthew said with a hollow voice. "We have to leave the apartment before January 31st. Audrey blinked as if he spoke another language. "No, impossible. This is your apartment." "It's rented," Matthew murmured. It always has been. But you pay on time. You have rights. They can't just… Yes, they can. And they just did. Audrey walked over and read the email over his shoulder. Her face changed from confusion to disbelief, and then to fury. This is about last night, isn't it? Your mom did this. Somehow she convinced the owner. I don't know. Matthew rubbed his face. But I have to find out. He grabbed his jacket and the keys to the Cadillac. Where are you going? To the Vance Properties offices. I'm going to talk to someone face to face. This can't be happening. 12:30 p.m. Vance Properties offices. Matthew parked the Cadillac in a nearby garage. $45 for the hour, a fortune he usually didn't care about. He walked fast toward the building on Fifth Avenue. He had never been there before. The facade was elegant, modernist, with tall windows. A discreet plaque said, Vance Properties, LLC, 3rd floor. He ran up the stairs 2 at a time. When he reached the reception desk, a young woman greeted him with a professional smile. Good morning. How can I help you? I need to speak to the director, the manager, whoever makes decisions here, Matthew said, trying to keep calm. I am a tenant and I just received a senseless eviction notice. My name is Matthew Vance. The receptionist checked something on her computer. Her expression changed slightly, almost imperceptible, but Matthew noticed it. One moment, please. She stood up and disappeared down a hallway. Matthew took the opportunity to look around. The walls were decorated with photographs of buildings. Matthew recognized some, the residential complex in Brooklyn, the offices in Soho, and then he froze. In a large photograph in the center of the wall was his father, Anthony Vance, wearing a hard hat, smiling in front of a half-finished building. The plaque underneath said, Anthony Vance, co-founder, 1989 to 2017. In memoriam. His father had been a construction worker. He had never mentioned being the owner of anything at Vance Properties. A man of about 45, impeccably dressed with silver at his temples, approached with his hand extended. I am James Turner, CEO of Vance Properties. I understand you have concerns about your lease. Matthew shook his hand automatically, but his mind was still processing the photograph of his father. Yes, Excuse me, that photo. My dad worked here. James followed his gaze, and something resembling sadness crossed his face. Anthony was much more than an employee, he said softly. But that is another matter. Why don't we go to my office to talk? James's office overlooked the avenue. Matthew sat in a leather chair while James opened a file on his desk. Mr. Vance, James began. I understand your concern, but the decision not to renew your contract is completely within the legal framework. The owner. Who is the owner? Matthew interrupted. I need to talk to him. There was a misunderstanding. My mom, she said something inappropriate at Christmas dinner, and if somehow that reached the ears of the owner. Your mother has nothing to do with this, James replied, though Matthew noticed something strange in his tone. It is simply a business decision. Then let me at least apply to renew. I can pay more. The market price is $8,500 a month, James said firmly. Can you pay that amount? Matthew opened his mouth, then closed it. The math was brutal and obvious. There are other apartments in New York City, James continued, not without a certain compassionate tone. I suggest you start looking soon. The market in January is competitive. Matthew stood up, feeling dizzy. This isn't right. Something isn't right here. As he left, he looked at his father's photograph again, and then he noticed something he hadn't seen before. In the background, slightly out of focus, was a woman in a simple dress with her hair tied back. She was holding a folder and talking to a man in a suit, something about her posture. It was hauntingly familiar. 2:15 p.m. shopping center on Fifth Avenue. Audrey had decided that a little retail therapy would be the solution, while Matthew dealt with the apartment thing. She would pick up the dress she had seen for the New Year's Eve party. In line to pay, she pulled out the silver card she always used, the one that never had a limit, the one that made the salesgirls treat her like royalty. She swiped the card. Declined. Can you try again? Audrey asked with a tense smile. The cashier tried 2 more times. Declined. I'm sorry, ma'am, the cashier said. The card isn't going through. Do you have another method of payment? People in line started to murmur. Audrey felt her cheeks burn. Must be a system error, she said quickly, putting the card away. "I'll come back later." She walked out of the store, her heart pounding. She immediately called the bank. "Chase Bank, this is Mary. How can I help you?" "My card was declined," Audrey said, trying to sound calm but authoritative. "I need to know what is happening. It's the card ending in 4829. One moment. Can I have the name of the account holder?" "Audrey Ruiz Vance." "I see here that this is an additional card. The primary account holder is Sarah Vance." Audrey felt as if she had been doused with ice water. "My mother-in-law?" "Yes, ma'am. And the card was canceled yesterday at the request of the account holder." "Canceled?" "That's right. It ceased to be active at 2:32 p.m. yesterday. Anything else I can help you with?" Audrey hung up without answering. Her hands trembled not from sadness, but from rage. She dialed Matthew immediately. "What happened?" he answered, exhausted. "Your mother canceled my card," Audrey screamed. "What card?" "The one I use. The one I always use. How dare she?" Matthew took a second to respond. His voice changed. "Audrey, that card isn't yours. It's an additional one from my mom. You said it was ours, that the company gave it to you as a benefit." I thought. "No, Matthew. Either you lied or you were too much of an idiot to know the truth." "Audrey, calm down. We can fix it. I have my own card. We can use." "Your card has a limit of $2,000, she spat. "Do you know how much I spend a month? Do you know how much it costs to maintain my image, my social media, my life?" "Maybe that's the problem," Matthew murmured. "What did you say?" "Nothing. Forget it. I'm coming home. We need to talk." Audrey hung up and stood in the middle of Fifth Avenue, surrounded by other people's bags, shining windows, and things she could no longer have. For the first time in 3 years, Audrey Ruiz felt poor, and she hated that feeling with every fiber of her being. Day 2, December 29th, 8 a.m. Matthew woke up with an intense headache. He had spent the whole night arguing with Audrey. She wanted him to do something, to talk to his mother, to fix this. But how? His mother wasn't answering. He didn't know where she really lived. And every time he tried to think clearly, the image of his father on the wall at Vance Properties returned to his mind. At Act 15's Octans, the doorbell rang. Matthew opened the door expecting a delivery guy with the breakfast Audrey had ordered, this time with visible disgust, paid for with his card. But instead he found 2 men in reflective vests, clipboards in hand. "Good morning, Mr. Matthew Vance. We are from the Asset Department of Vance Properties. We are here to recover the Cadillac Escalade, plates AE 642. Matthew blinked, confused. "Recover? That's my car." The older man opened his clipboard and showed him a document. "According to our records, the vehicle is property of Vance Properties, LLC. You had temporary authorization for use, which has been revoked. We need you to hand over the keys and sign the return receipt." "This is ridiculous," Matthew shouted, feeling the blood rush to his face. "They gave me that car 2 years ago. I use it for work. They can't just come and take it." "Mr. Vance," the man said with professional patience, "here is the document. The vehicle was never transferred to your name. It was always company property. Here is your signature authorizing temporary use for representation purposes." He showed him a sheet. And there it was. Matthew's signature from 2 years ago on a document that clearly said temporary authorization. How had he not read it carefully? "And if I refuse?" Matthew asked, his voice tense. "Then we will proceed to recover it with a tow truck and the spare keys we have in our possession. Mr. Vance, this can be easy or hard. You decide." Audrey appeared behind Matthew, still in pajamas. "What's going on?" "They're taking the car," Matthew said with a defeated voice. "What?" Audrey pushed Matthew aside. "That car is ours. You can't." "Ma'am, please," interrupted the employee, maintaining a professional tone. "We are just workers following orders. If you have a complaint, you can go to our offices." Matthew turned around, went into the apartment, and returned with the Cadillac keys. He dropped them into the man's hand without a word. "Thank you for your cooperation. Sign here, please." Matthew signed the return receipt. The men inspected the car, took photographs, and 10 minutes later, the gray Cadillac disappeared down the street. Matthew and Audrey stood in the building's entryway, looking at the empty space in the parking garage. "Your mother," said Audrey slowly. She is destroying us. I don't understand. Matthew shook his head. None of this makes sense. How can my mom have so much power over? He stopped. An impossible, absurd idea began to form in his mind. The photograph of his father at Vance Properties, the word co-founder, the strange looks from James Turner, the fact that the apartment, the car, and the card were linked to Vance Properties. No, he whispered. It can't be. What can't be? Audrey asked. But Matthew was already running back to the apartment, looking for his laptop. The search for truth. Matthew typed into Google, owners of Vance Properties. The first results showed basic corporate information. Vance Properties, LLC. Real estate management company founded in 1995. James Turner. Portfolio. 47 properties in NYC and the tri-state area. Estimated value, approximately $40 million. He opened the images section. Photos of buildings, inaugurations, press articles appeared. And then he saw it. A photo from 2015 taken at the inauguration of a residential complex in Park Slope. In the foreground, James Turner cutting a ribbon. But in the background, clear as day, his mother, Sarah Vance, in a business suit, talking to two men in suits who listened to her with evident respect. Matthew enlarged the image. The caption read, James Turner, CEO of Vance Properties, at the inauguration of the Towers Complex, a project developed by the Vance family. The Vance family. With trembling hands, Matthew searched on LinkedIn, Sarah Vance, New York. There was no public profile. But searching among the employees of Vance Properties, an entry appeared without a photo. Sarah Vance, principal shareholder. No, it can't be. Matthew ran his hands through his hair. Audrey came over to read. Your mother owns Vance Properties? I don't know. Maybe. My God, Audrey. I think so. Then that apartment is hers. And the car is hers. And the card is hers. Everything is hers. Audrey collapsed onto the sofa, pale. We've been living in her house, spending her money. And you. She looked at him with fury. You bragging to everyone that you made it on your own. My God. Matthew felt nauseous. I didn't know. I swear to God, I didn't know. How could you not know? Did it never seem weird that an apartment in Tribeca cost $3,000? I thought it was an employee-preferred rate. She always lived so modestly, with her old clothes, her small apartment. What small apartment? Audrey let out a bitter laugh. I bet you anything that little apartment was also a facade. She probably has a huge house in the Hamptons she never showed us. Matthew stood up abruptly and grabbed the apartment keys. Where are you going? Audrey asked. To find someone who will tell me the truth. 2:20 p.m., Mount Sinai Hospital. His grandmother, Caroline, was in room 304 recovering from pneumonia. Matthew hadn't visited her in a week. He was too busy with parties and work. When he entered, she was awake, reading a magazine. Upon seeing him, a shadow of disappointment crossed her face. Matthew. What a surprise. He approached and kissed her wrinkled cheek. She looked fragile, small under the sheets. How do you feel? Better. The nurses say I can leave in a few days. That's good. There was an uncomfortable silence. Caroline looked at him intently. You didn't come just to ask about my health, did you? Grandma. Matthew sat next to her. I need you to tell me the truth about Mom, about the money, everything. Caroline slowly closed the magazine. So, you finally found out. She sighed, a tired sound that seemed to carry decades of weight. I knew it, son. I was there from the beginning. I watched your mother and father save every penny for years. I saw them buy their first apartment. I saw them build that empire brick by brick. Why did they never tell me, Grandma? She sighed even deeper. Because your mother wanted you to be strong on your own. She didn't want you to grow up like those spoiled rich kids who think the world owes them something. But they lied to me. They didn't lie to you, Caroline corrected firmly. They just didn't tell you everything, and that is very different. They let me believe that I was maintaining the house, that I was taking care of her, and that made you feel good, didn't it? Caroline said with a soft but firm voice. Matthew opened his mouth to protest, but the words stuck in his throat. It made you feel important, Caroline continued. The successful son taking care of his poor widowed mother. Matthew looked down. Your mother, Caroline went on, could have lived in a mansion. She could have retired 10 years ago, But she chose to live modestly. She chose to work every day. And she chose to give you advantages without you becoming dependent on them. Or at least she tried. What do you mean? Matthew asked. Matthew, how much did you spend last month on restaurants, clothes, trips? He didn't answer. Your wife. Caroline almost spat the word. She posted 47 photos last month bragging about her life of luxury, bags that cost more than a nurse's monthly salary. Meanwhile, your mother, the woman who owns all of that, wears the same coat from 5 years ago. I didn't ask for any of that, Matthew said weakly. You didn't ask for it, but you accepted it, Caroline replied. And not only did you accept it, son, you flaunted it. You told the world you had achieved all that. Matthew closed his eyes, feeling shame. And on Tuesday night, Caroline added with a sadness that hurt, in front of 25 people, you told your mother to pay rent or get out. Tears began to roll down Matthew's cheeks. I didn't know, he whispered. And does that make it better? Caroline asked, taking his hand with her weak strength. Your mother taught you with her silence, but you learned the wrong lesson. You thought her humility was weakness, that her generosity was an obligation. What do I do now, Grandma? Caroline squeezed his hand. Learn what she wanted to teach you from the beginning. The true value of things, the effort it takes to build something, the difference between having privileges and deserving them. How do I start? From zero, son. Like your mother and father did. Without her money, without her contacts, just you and your own effort. It's the only way you'll ever be able to look her in the eyes again. Matthew stayed there for a long time, holding his grandmother's hand, crying for everything he had lost and for everything he was just beginning to understand. 2 weeks later, January, Matthew was standing in front of an old building in the South Bronx. The paint on the facade was peeling, there was no doorman, and the mailbox was rusted. This is apartment 4B, said the real estate agent. A young guy with too much gel in his hair, 450 square feet, 1 bedroom, small kitchen, 4th floor, walk-up, no elevator. How much? Matthew asked. $1,200 a month, plus utilities. Audrey, standing behind with her arms crossed, let out a bitter laugh. This is a joke. It's a shoebox. It's what I can pay, Matthew said without looking at her. I can't live here, Audrey growled. Look at this place. What am I going to upload to Instagram? Living my best life in a walk-up without an elevator? Then don't live here, Matthew replied, tired. The agent coughed uncomfortably. Do you want to see the inside? Yes, Matthew said. No, Audrey said at the same time. Matthew looked at her for the first time that day. Audrey, I have to make a decision. I have to hand over the keys to the Tribeca apartment on January 31st. I can pay for this place. It's ugly, it's small, but it's what my real salary can cover. That doesn't work for me, Audrey said firmly. Matthew, this isn't what I signed up for when I married you. What did you sign up for? A contract where I keep you in eternal luxury? I accepted a life, she rebutted. A life you promised. The successful architect, the nice apartment, the trips, the dinners. That life wasn't real, Matthew said, feeling something break inside him. It was a lie. A lie my mother funded while I believed the fairy tale. Audrey took off her sunglasses and looked at him coldly. Then find a way to get it back. Talk to your mother. Beg forgiveness. Do what you have to do. But don't ask me to live in this. She looked at the building with contempt. Matthew shook his head. My mom isn't answering my calls. She doesn't answer texts. I don't even know where she really lives. Then figure it out, she snapped. Go to her office. Beg if you have to. I'm not going to beg her for money. Why not? Audrey threw her hands up, indignant. Pride? Now you have pride? You didn't have it when you were spending her money on $400 dinners. The truth of those words hit him like a punch. Matthew took a deep breath. I'm going to rent this apartment, he said finally. You can come with me or not. You decide. He turned to the real estate agent. I want to see it. Audrey stayed on the sidewalk while Matthew walked up the stairs. She didn't follow him. When he reached the 4th floor, panting with his legs burning, he understood that Audrey was right about one thing. This wasn't what they had had before. But for the first time in his life, it would be truly his. Chapter 6. The Awakening. The apartment in the Bronx was as depressing as it looked from the outside. The walls had water stains, the kitchen had appliances from the 90 seconds, the bathroom had pink tiles, probably original from 1975. But it was his. Or it would be after signing the lease. Matthew moved in on January 30th with 2 suitcases and a feeling of shame that weighed on his chest like a stone. Audrey had left 3 days earlier, returning to her parents' house in Miami, leaving a note that said only, "Call me when you become the man I married again." Matthew didn't know if he had ever been that man. He spent his first day in the new apartment sitting on the floor. He had no furniture yet. He stared at the cracked ceiling, doing calculations on his phone. Net salary, $5,800 month. Rent plus utilities, $1,400. Food, $400. Transport subway, $130. Basic expenses, $200. Student loan payments, $800. Debt leftover credit cards, $1,000. After everything, he had maybe $1,800 left. In his previous life, Audrey spent that on a single bag. Day 15. February. Matthew had started looking for extra work. His position at the architecture firm paid decently, but he felt the need to work harder, to fill the empty time. One night, while eating instant ramen on the floor of his empty apartment, the table wouldn't arrive until next week, he received a message from an unknown number. "Hi Matthew, this is Andrew Miller. I run a small firm in Brooklyn. I work on social housing projects. Your father worked on some of our first buildings. I've seen your portfolio. Would you be interested in chatting?" Matthew replied immediately. "Yes." When? Day 20. Meeting with Andrew. Andrew Miller's office was in an adapted industrial space in Red Hook, Brooklyn. Exposed brick walls, desks made from reclaimed wood, 5 young employees working on MacBooks surrounded by models and blueprints. Andrew was about 50, messy hair, and the energy of someone who still loves his work after decades. "Your father," he said, pointing to a photograph on the wall. "He was one of the best builders I ever worked with. He understood the structure of a building like no one else. Not just the construction, but the soul of a space." Matthew looked at the photograph. There was his father, 20 years younger, smiling with other workers. "I didn't know you had worked together years before he and my mom founded Vance Properties," Matthew said. Andrew looked straight at him. "Do you know what your father told me once? Buildings aren't for showing off. They're for people to live with dignity." Matthew felt a lump in his throat. "I have a project," Andrew continued. "Renovation of housing in East New York. Old industrial buildings we need to convert into affordable apartments. The budget is low, the pay isn't high, but the work matters." "How much?" Matthew asked. $3,500 a month for 6 months. If it works, maybe more. It was much less than he earned at his corporate job. But Matthew nodded. "When do I start?" Andrew smiled. "Monday. Bring sturdy boots. You'll be on the site, not just in the office." Day 45. March. Matthew was getting up at 6 a.m. He took the subway to East New York. He worked on dusty sites until 6 p.m. He returned home exhausted. He ate something simple he had learned, to cook pasta, omelets, and basic salads. And he spent his nights drawing designs on his old laptop. One Saturday, his neighbor, an older woman named Rose, knocked on his door. "Excuse me, young man, do you have a little sugar?" I ran out. Matthew gave her a packet. She looked over his shoulder at the almost empty apartment. "Moved in a month ago, right? And your wife?" "I don't have a wife. I'm in transition." Rose nodded wisely. "Life puts you where you need to be, not where you want to be. If you want, come over tomorrow for dinner." "I'm making spaghetti." Matthew went. Rose's spaghetti reminded him of his mother's cooking, and for the first time since Christmas, he felt something resembling the warmth of a home. Day 60, April. Audrey sent him divorce papers. Matthew signed them without fighting. Part of him felt relieved. She deserved someone who could give her the life she wanted, and he needed to discover who he was without the weight of so many expectations. Day 90, May. The project in East New York was starting to take shape. Matthew had designed a modular system that allowed converting old industrial buildings into 500 square foot units with natural light and open spaces. Cost per unit, $45. Andrew was impressed. This could work on a larger scale. Have you thought about presenting it to investors? I don't have contacts, Matthew admitted. Well, I do, Andrew said. Let me make some calls. That night, sitting in his small apartment now with a table, a mattress, and 3 chairs bought at IKEA, Matthew thought of his mother. In the last 3 months, he had tried to call her 7 times. All his messages remained unanswered. He wrote one more. Mom, I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect you to give me anything back. I just want you to know that I finally understand. I'm learning slowly, but I'm learning. I love you, Matthew. Send. He didn't expect a reply, but 10 minutes later, his cell phone vibrated, a message from a number he recognized as James Turner's. Your mother received your message. She says she is well and is proud that you have found honest work. Keep it up. When the time is right, she will look for you. Matthew read the message 5 times. She is proud. For the first time in months, he smiled. Day 120, July 6 months later. The summer heat in New York made Matthew's small apartment in the Bronx feel like an oven. He had no air conditioning. Only an old fan Rose had given him. But there was something liberating in that sweat earned honestly, in that discomfort that reminds you that you are alive, that you are fighting. Matthew woke up at 5:30 a.m. to take advantage of the cool hours. On his tiny table, surrounded by blueprints and models made from recycled cardboard, was something that had kept him up for weeks. A project that could change everything. Project title, Dignity Housing NYC. 120 modular apartments on an abandoned industrial lot in the South Bronx. Total cost, $5 million. Price per unit, affordable rental cap. Target, low and middle-income families expelled from the housing market. It wasn't just architecture. It was social justice. His phone rang. It was Andrew. Matthew. Good morning. Are you sitting down? Yes. Why? Because I got you a hearing. There is a group of investors interested in social impact projects. They want to see you on August 15th. Matthew felt his heart accelerate. Who are they? I can't say much. They are discreet, but they handle serious capital. If your presentation is good, Matthew, this can be real. How much capital? Enough to finance the entire complex. But you have to be flawless. It's an opportunity that won't repeat itself. When he hung up, Matthew looked at himself in the bathroom mirror. 6 months had changed his face. He was thinner. He had dark circles under his eyes from working all night. His hands were full of calluses from being on the sites. But his eyes had something they never had before. Purpose. August 1st, preparation. Matthew spent the next 2 weeks preparing the presentation of his life. He worked on the site by day and in his apartment by night. Rose brought him coffee and omelets. Sometimes she stayed to watch him work. You remind me of someone, she told him one night. Who? A woman I used to see on the subway years ago. She always carried blueprints under her arm and always had that same look you have. Determination mixed with fear. Matthew looked up. What was she like? Older, elegant but simple, Rose replied. Once I saw her arguing with 3 men in suits over a contract. She shut all 3 of them up. Rose smiled. She had the same jawline as you. The same way of frowning when you think. Matthew felt a knot in his throat. Was it my mom? I don't know, son. But whoever that woman was, she built important things, like you are now. August 15th. The address Andrew had given him was in Midtown Manhattan, in a luxury corporate building. Matthew felt a chill as he approached. It was the Vance Properties building. He immediately dialed Andrew. There must be a mistake. You gave me the wrong address. This is no mistake, Andrew said with a soft voice. Trust me. Go in. Matthew stood in front of the building he had visited 6 months earlier in a state of absolute confusion. Now he returned with a worn portfolio, a second-hand suit he had bought for $50, his first expensive purchase in months, and 50 pages of dreams printed on paper. The receptionist recognized him. Mr. Vance, they are waiting for you in the boardroom on the 4th floor. Who is waiting for me? She smiled mysteriously. Go up and you'll find out. The executive room. The elevator opened on the 4th floor. A level he hadn't seen before. A hallway with glass walls. Through them, you could see New York City stretching to the horizon, and at the end, a wooden door with a plaque. Boardroom. Office of the Chairwoman. Matthew knocked. "Come in." He opened the door and stood motionless. Seated at the head of the long oak table, in a gray business suit, her hair perfectly pulled back and hands clasped, was his mother, Sarah Vance. To her right, James Turner. To her left, Rachel Martin, the lawyer. And in the chairs at the back, 3 more people with folders and laptops, clearly part of the executive team. "Matthew," Sarah said with a professional, calm voice, "please, take a seat." Matthew couldn't move. He couldn't breathe. "Mom, Here I am, Chairwoman Vance," she said, without harshness but with firmness. "And you are the architect, Matthew Vance, presenting a social housing project, correct?" Matthew swallowed hard. "Correct." "Then sit down and begin. You have 1 hour." Matthew walked to the projector with trembling legs. He connected his old laptop, the screen cracked in the corner covered with tape. While the system loaded, he looked at his mother. She observed him with a neutral, executive expression, as if evaluating a stranger. And in a way, he was. The Matthew she had expelled 6 months ago no longer existed. "Good morning," he began, his voice barely shaking. "My name is Matthew Vance. I am an architect specializing in social housing, and today I present a project that can change the lives of 120 families in New York City." The first slide appeared, a photograph of the abandoned lot in the South Bronx. Ugly, full of trash, forgotten. "This is a space the city has abandoned," he said. "But I see potential. I see homes. I see dignity." For 45 minutes, Matthew presented every detail. Modular design. Optimized 500 SQFT apartments. Materials. Recycled and sustainable. Budget. Realistic. Construction cost per unit, $45,000. Margin. 7%. Sufficient to sustain, not to get rich. Social impact. 120 families with decent housing, creation of 40 jobs, revitalization of the neighborhood. His mother took notes. James nodded occasionally. Rachel checked numbers on her calculator. When he finished, there was silence. James spoke first. "The budget is very tight. How do you guarantee there won't be overruns?" "Because I've spent 6 months working physically on construction sites," Matthew replied. "I know every supplier, every price, every risk. And I added an 8% buffer for contingencies." Rachel intervened. "And if the city doesn't approve the permits?" "I already had preliminary conversations with urban development. The project aligns with their affordable housing goals. I have 85% confidence in approval." An executive he didn't know raised her hand. "Why should we invest $5 million in a project with barely a 7% margin? There are developments that yield 25%. Matthew looked straight at her. "Because this isn't just about money. It's about doing the right thing. The city is living through a housing crisis. Thousands of families are being pushed out by inhumane prices. This project won't make us rich, but it will let us sleep at night." She wrote something down without showing emotion. Finally, Sarah spoke for the first time in 45 minutes. "Matthew, a personal question." Everyone in the room tensed. "Why this project? Why now?" Matthew looked at her. 6 months of pain, learning, and growth fit into that silence. "Because 6 months ago, I lost everything. My house, my car, my marriage, my pride, and in that process, I discovered something. Living in an apartment for $1,200 in the Bronx, walking up 4 flights of stairs every day, cooking instant soup because it's the only thing I can afford. That taught me more about architecture than 5 years of university." "How?" Sarah asked. "Because I understood that buildings aren't to impress, they are to live in, and that the people who most need decent housing are precisely those who have the least access to it. This project exists because I lived what they live, and because my father," his voice trembled, "he taught me that the hands that build matter more than the papers that sign." Sarah closed her notebook. "Thank you, Matthew. We will make a decision and inform you within 48 hours. That is all. You may leave." Matthew gathered his laptop, his papers, his worn portfolio. He walked to the door. Hand on the knob, he stopped. "Chairwoman Vance." "Yes?" "Regardless of the decision you make. Thank you. For every lesson, even the ones that hurt." He left without waiting for an answer. The deliberation. When Matthew left, Sarah remained seated in silence. The executives awaited her word. "Opinions?" she said finally. James was the first. "The project is solid. The numbers are realistic. He's done his homework, but the margin is very low. One mistake and we lose money." Rachel nodded. "Legally, everything is in order. Permits are viable. But I agree. The financial risk is high." The executive who had questioned the margin spoke. "As a pure investment, there are much better options. But," she hesitated, "as a statement of values? As a legacy? This is powerful." Sarah looked out the window. From there, you could see the Empire State Building, that symbol of resilience and sustained effort. "Anthony," she whispered. "What would you do?" She knew the answer. Anthony would have signed without hesitation. He always said, "Buildings aren't to accumulate wealth. They are to create dignity." "We approve the project," she said finally. "Total investment, $5 million. "Under what conditions?" James asked. "Matthew will be the project director. He will report monthly to this board. He will have operational autonomy, but strict financial supervision." She paused. "And if he succeeds, we will offer him a permanent position at Vance Properties. Not as my son, but as an architect who proved his worth." August 17th, 11 p.m. Matthew was in his apartment, unable to sleep, when his phone rang. Unknown number. "Yes? This is Matthew Vance." "Mr. Vance." A female voice, professional, urgent. "We are calling from Mount Sinai Hospital. Your mother, Sarah Vance, has been admitted. She suffered a cardiac episode. She is stable, but she is asking for you." The world stopped. "I'm coming." Mount Sinai Hospital. Midnight. Matthew arrived, sweating, out of breath after running from the subway. The receptionist sent him to the third floor. Cardiology, room 307. James was in the hallway, exhausted. "What happened?" Matthew grabbed his arm. "Stress? Exhaustion. Your mother has worked 16 hours a day since Christmas. Since she kicked me out," Matthew concluded. "She didn't kick you out," James said softly. "She set you free. But that doesn't mean it didn't hurt her." "Can I see her?" James hesitated. "She's awake, but Matthew, she's weak. Don't upset her." Matthew pushed the door open carefully. The room was dimly lit. In the bed, connected to monitors emitting regular beeps, was his mother. For the first time in his life, Sarah Vance looked what she was, a 64-year-old woman who had carried too much weight for too long. "Mom," he whispered. She opened her eyes. A weak smile crossed her face. "Hi, son." Matthew approached and took her hand. It was cold. "What did you do? Why are you doing this to yourself?" "Because I needed to be sure," she replied with a tired voice. "Sure of what?" "That when I gave you this opportunity, you would take it for the right reasons." She squeezed his hand weakly. "Your presentation today." Anthony would have wept with pride. Matthew felt the tears fall. "Forgive me, for every cruel word, for every moment of ingratitude, for—" Sarah raised her free hand and touched his cheek. "You are already forgiven. I forgave you the night you left. What took time was waiting for you to forgive yourself. I don't deserve this project. I don't deserve your trust." "It's not about deserving," she murmured. "It's about learning. And you learned, Matthew. Today I saw it in your eyes. You understand the value of effort, the weight of responsibility, the difference between privilege and right." A doctor entered. "Mrs. Vance needs to rest," he said. Then he looked at Matthew. "You can stay, but keep the conversation brief." When the doctor left, Sarah closed her eyes. "The project is approved," she whispered. "You start Monday. James will give you the details. You're going to be okay? I'm going to be perfect. But you have to promise me something. Anything. Don't work like I worked. Don't carry it all alone. Ask for help when you need it. Trust your team. And Matthew, live. Don't just dedicate yourself to building buildings. Build a life, one that is worth it. Do you promise me?" "I promise, Mom." She smiled, already half asleep from the medicine. "Good. Because I didn't do all this for you to repeat my mistakes. I did it for you to build something better." 6 months later, February of the following year, the lot in the Bronx had transformed. Where before there was trash and abandonment, now There were solid foundations, steel structures rising toward the sky, and the constant sound of the future being forged through construction. Matthew was on site at 7 a.m. every day with his hard hat, boots, and blueprints under his arm. His team was small but dedicated: 2 young architects, an engineer, and 3 foremen who had worked with his father years ago. "Matthew," called one of the workers, "we have a problem with Unit 23. The measurements don't match." Matthew climbed the scaffolding. He had lost his fear of heights weeks ago. He checked personally. The error was minimal, but it could cause structural problems. "We're going to dismantle this section," he decided. Better to lose 2 days than compromise safety. It wasn't the first difficult decision, nor would it be the last. Monthly reports. Every first Friday of the month, Matthew presented progress to the Vance Properties Board. Sarah, fully recovered from her cardiac episode, presided over the meetings with a critical eye. "Unit 45 is a week behind," she pointed out in the March meeting. "Problem with the window supplier," Matthew explained. "It's already resolved. We'll make up the time next week." "And the budget?" "We are 3% under projection. I negotiated better prices with 3 suppliers." James smiled from his seat. Sarah just nodded and turned to the next page. But at the end, when everyone left, she stopped him. "Good work, Matthew." 3 words. But coming from her, they were worth more than any salary. Crisis. May. A rainy Tuesday. Part of a wall collapsed. Luckily, no one was hurt, but 3 workers had been there minutes before. The investigation revealed that a subcontractor had used cheaper materials to increase their profits. Matthew was devastated. "I should have supervised closer," he told Andrew, sitting on the site in the rain. "You can't be everywhere," Andrew replied, "but you can learn from this." The next day, Matthew fired the subcontractor, implemented daily inspections, and added 2 quality supervisors. It cost him $2,000 from the contingency fund. When he presented the incident to the board, he expected reproaches. Instead, Sarah said, "Errors happen. What matters is how we respond. You did the right thing." First family, August. The first finished unit was delivered in August. The Smith family, dad, mom, 2 kids, and a grandma had lived in a shared 300 square foot apartment in Harlem, paying $1,500 a month. When Matthew handed them the keys to their new 600 square foot home, Mrs. Smith cried. "It's beautiful," she repeated, walking through the empty but light-filled apartment. "I never thought we could have something like this." The youngest son, Lucas, a 10-year-old boy, ran up to Matthew. "Did you design this?" "Yes. I want to be an architect when I grow up. To make nice houses for people like us." Matthew knelt down. "You know, you are exactly the type of architect the world needs." He handed him his card. "When you're ready to study, call me. I'll help you." That night, Matthew sent a photo to his mother. Lucas standing in the entrance of his new home, with a gap between his front teeth and a smile that lit up everything. Sarah replied, "This is building a legacy. Well done, son." December 24th, 1 year later. Sarah was in the kitchen of her real apartment in Queens. Not the penthouse, not a mansion, just a comfortable home, full of light, with photographs of Anthony on the walls and the aroma of roast turkey filling every corner. Matthew arrived at 5 p.m. with 2 bags of food. "I came to help with dinner," he said. "Do you know how to cook now?" Sarah asked, raising an eyebrow. "Rose taught me the basics. Don't put me in charge of anything complicated, but I can peel potatoes without cutting myself." They worked together, Matthew peeling vegetables, Sarah preparing the gravy. The radio played Christmas carols. "How many are coming?" Matthew asked. 12. James and his family, Rachel, Andrew, Rose, your grandma Caroline, some employees from the company, and Lucas and his family. I invited them. Matthew felt a knot in his throat. "Mom, it's a family dinner," he said simply. "And family isn't always blood," she replied. "Sometimes it's the people who build with you." The dinner, 8:30 p.m. The table was smaller than the previous year. There was no fine china or crystal glasses, just mismatched plates, regular cups, and food made with love. But the conversation was real. The laughter was genuine. And when Lucas showed Matthew a drawing he had made a tall building with the word hope at the top, everyone applauded. At 10 p.m. sharp, Matthew stood up. His heart was beating fast. "I want to say something." The table went silent. Exactly 1 year ago, at a Christmas dinner, I said the cruelest words I have ever said to someone I love. I told my mother to pay rent in her own house. I humiliated her. I treated her like a burden. He looked at Sarah, who listened with shiny eyes. "And she," he continued, "did what only a truly wise mother would do. She didn't yell at me. She didn't explain anything. She simply let me fall. She let me lose everything. And in that fall, she taught me to fly." He turned fully toward her. "Mom, I spent this year learning what you always knew, that the value of things is not in their price, but in the effort it costs to create them. That wealth without character is poverty in disguise. And that true love sometimes has to be tough to be real." He pulled an envelope from his pocket. "This is for you." Sarah opened it. Inside was a cashier's check for $16,800. "That is every dollar I spent on your card during those 3 years, Matthew explained. "It took me 12 months to save it, but it's yours, with interest." Sarah looked at the check, and then tore it into pieces. "I don't want your money," she said softly. "I want your character. And that, my son, is priceless." She stood up and hugged him. For the first time in a year, mother and son held each other in an embrace that healed all wounds. The table erupted in applause. Grandma Caroline was crying. Rose shouted, "Bravo!" James raised his glass. Lucas whispered to his mom, "When I grow up, I want to be like Matthew." Sarah smiled. "Then learn not just from his work, son. Learn from his heart." After dinner, midnight. When everyone left, Matthew helped his mother clean. They washed dishes side by side in a comfortable silence. "The project inauguration is in March," Matthew said. 120 units finished. 100% occupancy. "I know," Sarah replied. "James keeps me informed. And after that, Andrew offered me a partnership at his firm, but I also have other options." Sarah stopped washing and looked at him. "What do you want, Matthew?" "Not what I want, nor what others expect. What does your heart want?" Matthew thought carefully. "I want to keep doing this. Social housing projects that matter. But also," he hesitated, "I want to be close to you. I lost many years not really knowing who you are, not valuing everything you built. I want to recover that time." Sarah smiled. "Then, I have a proposal. Vance Properties is expanding its social impact division. We need a director, someone who understands architecture, but also the heart behind it. Are you offering me a job? I am offering you a purpose. With a fair salary, no special privileges, but with the opportunity to change hundreds of lives. Are you interested, Matthew?" He looked her in the eyes. "Yes. But on one condition." "Which one?" "That we have dinner together at least once a week. Without talking about work. Just mother and son. Making up for lost time." Sarah extended her hand. "Deal." They shook hands formally, then laughed and hugged. Year 2029. Inauguration of the Anthony Vance Complex. Matthew was 40 years old. He already had his first gray hairs, but his eyes shone with the satisfaction of someone who has found his place in the world. He stood in front of a complex of 15 buildings on the outskirts of New York City. Anthony Vance Housing Complex. 450 Social Impact Units. By his side was Sarah, now 69, officially retired but never absent. "Your father would be screaming with excitement," she said. "I know. Sometimes I feel like he's here watching everything." He always has been. In the audience were the families who had received housing. Lucas, now 15 and with a full scholarship to study pre-architecture programs, rose in the front row with a handkerchief for the tears. James, Rachel, Andrew, the whole team. And a new woman next to Matthew, Anna, a teacher in underserved neighborhoods. They had been together for 2 years. She understood his passion, shared his purpose. When Matthew took the microphone, he thought about his prepared speech, then ignored it and spoke from the heart. "This project bears the name of my father, Anthony Vance. A man who believed that buildings are not to accumulate wealth, but to create dignity. But it is also the legacy of my mother, Sarah Vance, who taught me the most important lesson of my life, that true love sometimes has to let you fall so you can learn to fly." He looked at his mother. 5 years ago, I was an arrogant man who believed he deserved everything without having earned anything. Today, I am just a man trying every day to be worthy of the name he carries. These 450 homes are not my achievement, they are our achievement. Of every family that trusted the project, of every worker who put their sweat into every brick, of every person who believed that New York can be a place where everyone has a decent home. And it is a promise. As long as I live, I will keep building, not for my wallet, but for our collective future. The crowd applauded. Matthew cut the ceremonial ribbon. The doors opened, and the families began to enter their new homes. Lucas approached Matthew. "Remember when you gave me your card 5 years ago?" "Of course." I kept it. The boy showed an envelope. I was accepted into a summer architecture program at Columbia University. Full scholarship. I want to design buildings like you. "Not like me," Matthew said, putting a hand on his shoulder. "Better than me. Learn from my mistakes and build a world that we can only imagine." That night, terrace of Sarah's apartment. Sarah and Matthew were sitting on the terrace, looking at the lights of New York City stretching out until they were lost. "Are you happy, son?" Sarah asked. "Yes, more than ever. And Anna is different from Audrey. Real, genuine. She loves my work, not my status. That is the difference between love and a transaction." Matthew nodded. Then he asked, "And you, Mom? Are you happy?" Sarah thought carefully. "I am at peace. And that is better than happiness. Happiness comes and goes. Peace remains. And what gives you peace? Seeing that you became the man I always knew you could be. Seeing that the name Vance means something bigger than money. Knowing that when I am no longer here, there will be something worthy to inherit." "Don't talk like that. You're going to live 30 more years." Sarah laughed. "Maybe. But when my time comes, I want you to know something. That everything I built," she extended her hand toward the city, "is not my true legacy. You are. The man you became. That is my masterpiece." Matthew's eyes filled with tears. "I don't deserve a mother like you." "No one deserves love, Matthew," she replied softly. "We can only honor it, and you have honored it." They stayed there while the city shone beneath them, a city of dreams built with effort, of homes earned with dignity, of legacies that transcend generations. And in that moment, both understood that Sarah's silence, that silence that almost destroyed her family, had finally spoken. And its message was clear. True love is not demonstrated with easy gifts, but with difficult lessons. It is not measured in dollars spent, but in character forged. Sarah Vance had built a real estate empire, but her true inheritance was a son who finally understood that a man's value is not measured by what he possesses, but by what he builds with his own hands. When the city lights go out, and only the echo of our decisions remains, we understand that there is no greater inheritance than dignity, nor wealth worth more than the peace of a mother's heart. Sarah learned to set boundaries, and Matthew understood late. But in time, that true love is not measured in square footage or luxury cars, but in character.